Is this one of the world's most dangerous millennials? Mohammed Bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, better known as MBS. To some, he is a revolutionary who has transformed life in Saudi Arabia, especially for women. To others, he is a butcher who fueled a bloody war in Yemen and the CIA believes approved an operation to kill or capture a Washington Post journalist who was cut up with a bone saw. Now, thanks to the global energy crisis, the Crown Prince looks stronger than ever, and world leaders are queuing up to get their hands on his oil. After hours in Saudi Arabia, men and women mixing freely and a female DJ on the decks. What will he do next? Just a few years ago, all this would have been illegal. Public entertainment was banned and unmarried men and women were not allowed to socialize. In the past, Saudi Arabia was governed according to a strict interpretation of Islam. Clerics controlled everything from social life to the role of women. That was until the rise of Mohammed Bin Salman. The young crown prince stripped the clerics of their power, increased women's rights, including giving them the right to drive, all in a radically short period of time. So who is the man behind these changes? MBS is a millennial who enjoys flaunting his wealth. He splashed out over 200 million on a French chateau. Despite his confidence, few could have predicted MBS's rise. In Saudi Arabia's ruling dynasty, the House of Saud, power usually passes sideways from brother to brother. MBS's father, Salman, had several older brothers ahead of him in line for succession, but when two died, he was able to take the throne, opening up the way for MBS to succeed him. Although he still had several older half-brothers ahead of him in line for the throne. So when Salman became king in 2015, he increased MBS's portfolio. These are just some of the titles he was given. Then in 2017, according to insider reports, MBS forced his cousin to step aside as a crown prince. After this, MBS wasted no time in cementing his power. It was a shake-up that sent shockwaves across the kingdom and the world. Saudi Arabia detained top officials in a sweeping corruption probe. He invited the wealthiest man in the kingdom, along with the world's business elite, to a conference on the future of the Saudi economy, a self-styled Davos in the desert. A short time later, he used the opportunity to hold many of them in a luxury hotel. Since then, his aggression and repressive behavior have escalated. He has consolidated power around his own court. Human rights groups estimate thousands have been detained, and in March this year alone, 81 were executed. Some are much more skeptical. Khalid Al-Jabri says he knows firsthand how brutal the regime can be. Khalid lives in America, but his roots are in Saudi Arabia. In 2017, Omar and Sarah were banned from leaving the kingdom. 3 years later, they were seized by the authorities. Khalid's father was an advisor to the former crown prince Mohammed bin Naif. Khalid thinks his siblings' travel ban has been used by MBS to try to pressure his dad to return to the kingdom. And he has seen messages from MBS to his father which he believes support this. It's a complicated story. Khalid's dad is also accused of stealing billions of dollars from the Saudi government, which he denies. Meanwhile, Khalid worries about his own security. MBS has famously been linked to the murder of outspoken former royal court insider and journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was dismembered with a bone saw in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Nicholas knew him personally. MBS has said he takes responsibility for the murder but denies ordering it. For a time, it looked like the killing could jeopardize the kingdom's relationship with one of its closest allies, America. Saudi Arabia has long been a strategic ally in the Middle East. Successive presidents have happily sold arms to Saudi leaders. It's also home to the world's largest accessible oil reserves, and thanks to the energy crisis caused by the war in Ukraine, President Biden's threats now look empty. So where might the change come from? Let's start in the kingdom itself. There may be little overt opposition, but some, including religious hardliners, are unhappy with his reforms. Another weak point is the economy. Since taking power, he has dedicated himself to diversifying the kingdom away from oil, with everything from tourism to flashy eco-cities like Neom. But despite the glossy PR promises of new cities in the sand, unemployment is still in double figures. while many of the oil-related subsides Saudis have traditionally enjoyed are gone. So what about threats beyond the kingdom? The most immediate is right on his doorstep in Yemen. As defense minister back in 2015, one of the first things MBS did was intervene in a bloody war to crush Houthi rebels who were being supported by the kingdom's arch-rival, Iran. But 7 years on, the Houthis have forced the better-armed Saudis into ceasefire, which still leaves the kingdom looking exposed. But perhaps the greatest threat to the crown prince might be MBS himself. He's shown himself to be ego-driven, aggressive, and impulsive, and perhaps it's only so long before he makes a fatal misjudgment. We put the allegations in this film to the royal court in Saudi Arabia. It declined to comment, but in response to a related piece about MBS in The Economist, it denied all allegations against the crown prince, insisting they are fabricated and without foundation. The kingdom is unfortunately used to false accusations made against its leadership, usually based on politically or other maliciously motivated sources.